Human family, thank you for tuning in. I'm Keenan White, and I'll be sharing stories, dialogues, and methodologies for leading a conscious, abundant life. To me, luminous is a word that connects us to our vital life force energy and soul essence. Your bioluminosity is a barometer for health, a gauge for abundance, true prosperity, and a luminous way of life. In this podcast, I hope you find a more effortless way of tuning into the wisdom of your body, soul, and spirit. We'll explore the many faces of medicine, creativity, and self-mastery as it evolves and spans into esoteric and ancient wisdom and modern paradigm shifts in consciousness. I'm here with Zoe Dane today. I'm really excited to talk with her today. How's it going, Zoe?
Good, going,
It's
flowing.
going, flowing. Yeah, we've been in the thick of it, at least I have a little bit. And I think we're going to take this beautiful time to explore sacred union and what it means to cultivate a thriving union within and without. And I'm just going to give a little brief intro. This is about Zoe. She's a feminine embodiment guide, sacred union mentor, and a certified hypnotherapist here to help people thrive in their destiny timelines. I love that. You want to add
Yay.
anything to that?
Well, I also recently, Keenan, you and I met because we had a mutual friend who got us into our theta healing certification. So I feel like it's, just the realm of energy work and tuning into unconditional love and having that be our anchor, that's what we're here bringing forth.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love how we met through a mutual friend through theta healing, and we were both able to bring in a theta healing prayer prior to the episode. Just bring some prayers and some good energy in for all the people out there that might be listening in today that may be in a sacred union, or maybe you're single or you're wanting to call that in and you've, just been going through the ups and downs. It's not all bubbly and playful all the time, is it?
No. And well, firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on. I'm grateful to be here speaking about something that I feel will heal the world, which is union and the sacredness of union and cultivating, first and foremost, right, for people who aren't in union, that union within. And even in union, right, making sure that we are tending to that inner union, tending to that inner flame, because so much of the time when we get into relationship, we think that it's supposed to be bubbly and playful and warm and, you know, um, yeah, just like this bubble of bliss all the time, which it is in the beginning. And I have a theory on the honeymoon phase, right? I feel that it shows us who we truly are. It shows us who the other person truly is. Like we are in this state of unconditional love. It's like puppy love, like the energy of a puppy, a dog who is like so innocent and curious and playful and loving and loyal, right? And then, things start to come up, like our past traumas, our experience up until this point that has shaped us, our childhood experiences start to rear their heads and they start to be triggered and activated by our counterpart. And we always choose who is going to help initiate us the most, right? Who's going to bring up these unintegrated pieces that really want to be integrated. And ultimately, integration is just love, right? And it's all these parts of ourselves that we have been suppressing or repressing or shaming or hating or like rejecting entirely within us that are now brought to the forefront in a container of sacred union. And actually, this morning, one way that I honor union within myself is by waking up in the morning and really tuning inward and putting like one hand on my heart, one hand on my womb, or just really tuning in and going, okay, what do I need this morning? Like, what is going to really fuel my heart before I check my phone, before I interact too much with my partner? And this morning I rolled over and I picked up the book Whatever Arises, Love That by Matt Kahn.
Love that one.
And it's so good. And I flipped to the page I left off on, and, it's just really like the entire book. He is just really grilling, or like reiterating that it is all about the return to love and loving whatever arises. And if that can be our daily practice, right? First and foremost within ourselves, but then also in our union. And I feel that in order to really come into union from a space of feeling whole, right, we get to devote ourselves to that inner union, and it never stops. Our primary partnership is always with self. And then the relationship with our beloved is just mirroring back, where we get to strengthen that relationship with self and tend to that relationship with self and fill up on source, right? Instead of trying to outsource from our partner, because that never works. And it's so easy to get caught in that, even if you've been doing this work for like decades. I talk to people who've been in this work for decades, and it's like, it's still such a spiritual practice to be in union.
Absolutely. I love that distinction you made. I mean, yeah, I mean, within the tantric world, it's essentially, you're just exploring relationship to everything. And the first relationship is with ourselves. I mean, and just how we relate to anything, right? I mean, how you relate to that waking moment is a relationship. How you relate to the hunger that you get in your belly the next moment, maybe when you roll out of bed, have a glass of water. And then how are we like going to get that water? I mean, there's a relationship to even like picking up a glass, grabbing a lemon, squeezing it, and all that plays into the relationship. And I just love that you're highlighting the importance of taking ownership and responsibility of that as the primary partnership.
I love that, I came up at a quote channel through me a couple of years ago when I was in this really deep union with myself and source during lockdown. And I would go for walks, and it was like, just like in union with everything, the beauty of the flowers and the grass and the music that was playing in my headphones. And it was just like full ecstatic immersion. And I could just enter that state on a walk, like you were sharing. It's being in union with everything, and ultimately allowing love to move through you, and asking love how it wants to move through you, and connecting with the love in all things. And so the quote is, Tantra is flirting with infinity. So flirting with that which is infinite, right? And the infinity of love that is inherent in all things through our finite form, which then brings us to masculine and feminine polarity and energetics, right? And the way that we are interacting with that within ourselves and then out in the world. And that affects everything. The way we show up in our business, the way we show up in our partnership, the way we show up in really kind of triggering familial dynamics, right? Like, especially around holiday season, it's like there's such a tendency to lose ourselves to these automatic responses and reactions, and almost regress in age, right? And it's like, how can we even have a relationship with that and meet it?
Yeah, to the reactivity, which is, you have one of those posts on your Instagram that talks about that idea that, I see if I can pull it up, or you say that a woman's is here to do spiritual work for the collective, not cater to your preference of feminine energy. And we can't expect a woman to be light and bubbly all the time. And there's this idea that you share in that post about how shadows and darkness play a role in your life. And I think this is it, right? That moment where we can catch the shadow or catch the reactivity. Really, any shadow to me is really just fear. And so, well, there's a deeper side to that, but how I've been equating shadow has been with fear. And so fear shows up in sometimes a reactivity, or it can be in repression. And so I think just being able to, like, what I'm hearing from you is there's a value in embracing that part of ourselves that gets reactive or that does repress. Where, I mean, I know in the past there's been, yeah, lots of moments where like I want to be in a different place. Like I'm being reactive, I'm being repressive. I notice that. And then I'm like, why am I doing that? Or, but there's such a learning and embracing the part of me that does that, that just is fearful, because there is the fear and there is the love. And holding that simultaneous awareness, I think, is really important.
Yeah, beautiful. There's two acronyms for fear that I love. The first is fear, false evidence appearing real, or no, fuck everything and run.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
The next one is face everything and rise.
Yes.
So it's like in every moment that fear shows up, and to be devoted to love, right? And then to love what arises, as Matt Kahn so beautifully says, is to embrace what comes up when it comes up, and to really feel it. And no matter how many times we have felt these feelings or we have gone there, it's almost like when we have to purge, like when we have to throw up, or there's always that moment where it's like, I don't want to do this and I'm going to do everything that I can to not do it, but we always feel so much better when it's out. So I can use an example. Recently in my union, we were in Kentucky. I was sharing for 8 days with his family, sharing a little space, and our flight was delayed an extra 2 days. And there was a part of me that was like, fuck, like, I don't want, like, I want to go home and do my things. And like pretty quickly, I was able to shift it and go, okay, something is here, like this is here to serve me in some way. I trust God's plan. And how can I make the most out of where I am right now? How can I love myself here? I think that's a huge question. How can I love myself here? And how can I give myself the space to feel what's here? Because that is loving myself, and like really allowing myself to go there and be transformed by the experience of feeling and freeing it. And
I love that.
yeah,
I think, go ahead.
Just to finish that little piece, just to give like a real-time example. This was a couple days ago, and there was an unoccupied room like right across from our room, and I like set up a fluffy pink blanket, and I brought a candle in there, and I like made it really sweet so that it felt nourishing to my inner child and my feminine, and it felt like a space that would hold me. And I noticed I was trying to like journal about it and like figure it out logically, and then a part of me was like, no, you get to feel this. And I really just let myself go there and feel it and cry and suspend the story of what I was crying about, what I was feeling. And instead, I just kept dissolving into the feeling. And as that was happening, like I could feel the layers around my heart just like dissolving. And I could feel these projections toward my partner and toward, anything outside of me dissolving, because I was in real time assuming ownership of my reality through feeling it. And it shifted everything.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, being an astrologer, I really think about the idea of sovereignty, and I know that's a theme you want to bring into this episode too. I think about sovereignty as Capricorn, and then we have the opposing or complementary sign Cancer. And so, like in our like evolutionary drive and desire to explore and experience sovereignty, it can't be without that sense of the Cancerian world of feeling and the rhythm of things and the ebbs and flows of the feeling. And I think about the sea goat, as like this symbol for our capacity to carry out like a great work, and then to go through the hardships. And this sea goat has this tail that dips down into the ocean, the oceanic world, which is symbolic of our feeling, and how necessary it is to just bring that in. I really think that the sovereignty that we're all looking for is in our ability to govern our feelings and to embrace the feelings that arise, right, naturally, and also to realize we are like an emotional bartender. We can we can make up our own emotional cocktails as well, and actually create feelings. So there's that, like, it makes me think about the importance of embracing what arises, loving that, and then realizing the creationship in that as well, and how we get to dream up and be not necessarily subject to the feelings only, but to place ourselves into the subjective, like, what subjective experience do I also want to create now that I have felt that? And I think it can be really hard to find that directionality if you haven't felt anything. So I think a lot of the, like, the way that I think about, like, this weaving of polarity, masculine, feminine dynamics, I talk about this idea of the telerotic life, and telos being more about like purpose and our true aim, and then the eros being what brings us into our aliveness and our, it's like the spirit of love, like animating everything, and it's the energy, right? And we can't know our direction and our purpose and our true aim without feeling and being alive with that love. And what's the point of that purpose anyways if we're not alive with it? So they're really two and one and the same. But yeah, I wonder for you, in terms of the way that you feel and you work with your feelings and your sensuality and just being a sensual being, how does that play a role in your relationship and your union?
I notice that when I'm not connected to my eros, when I'm not pulsing with the frequency of, universal love, which in Gene Keys is actually the highest, that's the city of my purpose. It's the highest expression of my purpose. If I'm not pulsing with that, then I'm constricted, right? And if I'm constricted, then life force isn't flowing through me. And it's easy from that space to then start to project it onto my partner. Like, you're not showing up this way. So therefore, I'm not pulsing with my aliveness and my radiance. Rather than, when I am in this space of empowered sovereignty and empowered sensuality, I can take, like, I know how to, like, in a nutshell, I've cultivated such a strong and deep and rich relationship with the divine and with the goddess and with my connection to the goddess, which is a frequency. And if I'm not taking the time to nourish that frequency, nurture that frequency, and tune into that frequency, then my life starts to feel dull and a little bit dim. And I know something's not fully being embodied. And usually the gateway back to that space is feeling. And what I've realized lately, and I'm sure many people listening to this can relate, is there's all these really subtle ways that we try to not feel, that we're avoiding feeling what's actually here and present, right? And lately I've noticed that's been my social media. Like I've kind of bordered on like in an addictive space with social media. So I actually deleted Instagram off my phone. And since deleting the actual app off of my phone, the spaciousness that's opened in my field, and to me, that's sovereignty. I really was able to tune in with my intuition and go, okay, how do I get more of myself back right now? Because I feel like pieces of me are leaking, and I'm ready to be in my power again, and like to steward that for myself. And that looked like deleting the app off my phone, and immediately just clearing the app off the phone created such a spaciousness in my field, where I realized that there were things I wasn't feeling. And so I took the initiative to go and, take the space to feel them. Also dancing, right? Like just getting into the body and not having it be a performative thing, but a very deeply feeling process. Because ultimately that connection to eros, that connection to the sensual realm of being so tapped into this physical reality in a way that feels pleasurable, it requires us to eradicate the shame that we're holding on to, right? And we can't really do that through the mind. It is heart work. So again, it all comes back to this piece of how am I tending to my heart? How am I tending to myself, right? Because that is my primary partnership. From that space, I can then communicate with my beloved from my heart. I'm not creating all of these stories. I'm connecting with him from my body, from my heart, and the transmission of that is very different. It's received different. It feels different. It mitigates a lot of like over processing loops and trauma loops, right? When I can be in my body and fully feel what's present and real.
I love that. It's profound. Yeah. Very simple, but how often do we actually move from that place? And I mean, it sounds like your commitment, your devotion to that frequency of the divine, which really to me, it's like God, divine, like whatever you're going to call that. It's like just it's an emanation of love. And it's like I mean, actually, I think there is a mathematical signature of 528 hertz for all the scientists out there, the nerds out there like me, and I love that stuff. But it's that devotion that I feel from you that's really potent, that you can't really get from, you can't just get that from the relationship itself. It's the relationship you're cultivating to your life and to that frequency that's you're carrying into the relationship. And I mean, it makes me think about the field that gets created in the union, which is its own environment. And so there's a real shaping of that environment through your attunement that I'm hearing is what's really allowing you to navigate more effectively.
Yeah.
And
beautiful.
Not just effectively, but just with greater joy and peace and pleasure.
Totally. I mean, there's so much richness to life that's available to us, but again, it requires that feeling, and it sounds simple, but when push comes to shove and you're like in that process where you can either grab your phone and like get lost in a vortex of social media, or, like in a conversation, like with your roommate or whatever, there's all these things that can pull you out if you're not really tuned into what your home frequency is. So I feel like that's a big piece too, is for people in union, for people not in union, for anyone that's listening, is like, what is your home frequency? And know that your home frequency is love. It is your own experience of ecstasy, right? Like, and peace. Like there's a peacefulness to it as well. It's interesting that the two can coexist, but there's a deep satiation from your relationship with life. And to me, that's the home frequency. And what I've noticed is sometimes when I get resentful in my relationship, it's because I'm not feeling the totality of my home frequency. And I'm the only one who can go and actually create that, right? And then there's the home frequency that I feel with my beloved, right? And if I'm in too much in my solo home frequency, I yearn for my beloved frequency. So it's like this balance, right? But ultimately, like tending to the hearth of like our truest essence and our truest frequency, which can feel stifled in relationship because we start to quantumly entangle. And then we start to take on like each other's likes and dislikes, and we start to kind of like morph if we don't continue to tend to our home frequency and come back to, wait, what am I feeling? What do I like? How do I enjoy dressing? What feels true and right for me, independent. And then this comes back to the abandonment wound, because a lot of time in relationship, we feel that if we disagree, or if we speak our truth, or if we do what's in true alignment and right relation with self, that it might jeopardize our relationship, or that we might be abandoned, right? So it's coming back and tending to the core fears as well, because in that negating truth out of fear of abandonment, we actually abandon self. And the more we abandon self, the more there's this riff in our home frequency, right? It's like, whoa, did you see that?
I did, yeah, the balloons. I was like, how'd you pull that off? Good timing.
Wow.
For those who are just listening, there's a like a whole bunch of balloons that just floated above the screen here.
Yeah, they were all colorful balloons. So God is affirming.
Right. Not sure how that happened.
And the
Could be in the
beautiful thing,
mystery.
totally. And the beautiful thing, I mean, I feel like cool shit like that is always happening when we're like tuned in, right? It's like we can be in an experience, but we can also be having our own experience. And like subtle ways to do that, are like literally just putting your headphones in and listening to music, and like you can tune into your own frequency or like tune into the frequency of the music. It's like, how can you steward what feels like an authentically pleasurable way to experience life as it is right now without needing to change things, without needing to change yourself, without needing to change your partner? One of my favorite quotes that I heard not that long ago was like, we're not in the business or in the space of self improvement, we are in the space of self acceptance. And then from that space of self acceptance, things naturally start to improve, like the relationship, right? The external environment, like the opportunities coming up, the people you're interacting with, the richness and depth and authenticity in which we meet ourselves and like truly, truly meet ourselves just continues to be reflected in the external. And that's what starts to improve the relationship, right?
Yeah, it's really well articulated. You're capturing a lot of the subtle nuances that I think can be sometimes challenging to clarify when we're in the heat and thick of it, and it's like, what's going on, right? But you're capturing that really well, I think. And I think like what comes up for me, like in this conversation around all this, is the importance of the familiarity and enjoyment of like one's individual home frequency, as you're saying, and then the one in the union. And it makes a lot of sense that when you're in the frequency of the union too much, and it's almost like maybe there's less familiarity with your own individual home frequency, then there's a legitimate natural need for space, and therefore it could be perceived that we need to separate in our totality, right?
Yep.
And I think that's unfortunately, well, unfortunately or fortunately, because I mean those are in some ways moments that point to the initiations in the relationship that have us at the gateway of like, do we stay in and lean in to this greater love within each of our individual selves and together, or do we separate? And yeah, it just makes me see and think about that desire for space and separation as very natural. And to consider that, I know as a while back I was writing an article about the sixth love language, which was distance. And just thinking about the importance of distance, and it not necessarily being that it's like we need to get away from each other, but like we perhaps need to get reconnected to the individual self.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, we all know the saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder, and it allows for telepathy between hearts almost, because when we're attracted to our partner, like we come together because we are attracted from the space of home frequency. And typically, like the home frequencies, there's some kind of draw, right? That probably predate to our home of origin in some way, and the ways in which we're ready to integrate those pieces and become more whole within ourselves and within our own home frequency. So the space is, it's so underrated and so important, to stay connected to that piece of sovereignty. And I feel that that is what these evolutionary partnerships are all about. There's more grace and there's more room for sovereignty and for space and self-development work, right? And ideally both people are committed to the personal development work, because that enhances the union and everybody wins. But speaking of space, actually my partner and I were last night, we're talking about this because we've been together for 8 days straight. Very, very like attached by the hip, you know, and then adding in the family dynamic and like all of the pieces. We were just speaking into this last night. And sometimes like when you notice that, okay, I get to go recharge in home frequency, there can be also like an attachment that's happened energetically with partner because you have been so submerged in the union frequency, the physical union frequency. Sometimes it can take a minute to detach, you know, and go back to your own space. But and it's the same with anything. Like when you notice your reactivity is has gone up so much, and you know, maybe it's time to meditate, to like pull yourself back from the energy that is already being created, and the energy you've been stewing in is mastery, right? When you know that there's when you can feel that there's something coming up, like you feel sad or you feel angry, and to let yourself go and feel the feeling, right? That's mastery. It's like all these moments where we are disciplined or bliss-disciplined enough to pull back, to come home, right? Come home to heart, come home to self, and not be in this reactionary pattern or just on autopilot. That is, I feel like that's where we're going. And then speaking into the space, my partner and I actually did take space because when I moved in with him 2 years ago, I could feel that a lot was going to come up. I had anxiety as like the process was happening, and I moved in and all of our shit came up, and we did not have nearly enough tools to navigate it. And 3 months in, we decided to separate, even though we were so in love and so in love with each other's souls. Like the soul love is so deep and profound and ineffable. We knew that in the physical, in order for us to grow into the versions that we knew we were destined to be, or wanted to be, designed to be rather, we needed to separate, and that so much would reveal itself in the time of our separation. And we were apart for 1.5 years, and there were a couple times where we tried getting back together and we could just feel, okay, it's not ripe yet, it's not time yet, but we longed to be together. And so in that space, not only were we both able to reclaim our sovereignty, we were able to go through these massive initiations. We just did an episode recently. He went through a lot to become who he is now. And it really let us reset, but also refine. And we were able to meet in these like entirely new timelines with a deeper devotion to love, a deeper devotion to each other, and a deeper like belonging to self. And also a deeper knowing. Like we've been apart for 1.5 years, and there's not a day that's gone by where we weren't missing or thinking about each other, but knowing that we needed to do this for ourselves. And so I believe love is not linear, and the connection that we share with people is not linear. And nothing is lost when we choose what's best for ourselves, knowing that that's what's best for everybody. And sometimes that really does mean surrendering a relationship up to the higher power, up to God, right? Like, God, what is the highest manifestation of our relational agreement, of our relationship in this realm? I offer it to love for the highest and greatest good of all. Please show me, right? I said that a lot before our separation. Please show me. I want what you want for me. Please show me what's best. You know, I trust that whatever, this was the quote that got me through. It's by Christopher Wallace, who wrote Tantra Illuminated. Throw yourself into the fire. Nothing true will perish, and nothing false will remain. And although I knew where my heart was and who I wanted to spend my life with, I also got to completely grieve that reality, completely grieve the loss of him, and completely grieve what I thought was best for myself in order to completely offer it to the fire and to God. And I'm very blessed and grateful that it like came back around, and that we are where we are today, you know. But I also was fully prepared for that to not be the case, if that was what was for the highest, for me, for him, for the world. So
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot in there. I think it's just nice to hear a story in which I think it's just very powerful how there's that moment where, yeah, I mean, it's it's a toss up of like, what does love really want for us in this moment? And I think that's the power of love in its highest, is that it's, you know, it's fostering our spiritual growth. And if the spiritual growth needed for each person is it's requiring spaciousness, then the fact that you two were able to see that and honor that and embrace that, and then also go through the fires of letting it all go, because at that point, whether you come back together or not, you'd be totally different people anyway. So you know, there's a letting go and grieving of that person that you are and that he was, um that's necessary.
Yeah, we had to let
And then
the
it all
whole,
came back.
yeah. We had to let the whole relationship die. So the way we were relating to ourselves, the way we were relating to each other, the way that we were um holding the mold of the relationship as it was, right? Like as humans, we go through so many deaths and rebirths, especially like on the entrepreneurial path, or these paths that require you to take these risks and really own who you are in the world, and like kind of forge your own path. There are these deaths and these rebirths, and every relationship is one as well too, the ones that we graduate from. And that is like sacred union, like what is the highest for each of us, and how are we catalyzing that with and for each other, from that space of love, right? Even when it really, really hurts. And how are we, how willing are we to go through the fires of transformation and to become the phoenix, right? And to rise into a higher octave of love. And luckily, we were both able to kind of parallel each other in that, because the pain was so deep and so great that it became such a catalyst for so much. And I feel like a lot of couples, I do not recommend this to all to all couples. I feel like it really is an intuitive process. Every union is so unique, and every union is here to catalyze, whatever it's meant to catalyze. And sometimes that is like an ending, so something else can come in. But and sometimes it's just taking like a couple weeks of space, right, to go really recalibrate in your own frequency. Or
Was
sometimes, yeah.
Go ahead, finish that thought, and then I'll ask you something about the story.
Yeah, or sometimes it's, full on a full on separation, to really know where your heart is, and like who you are without the relationship. Because him and I, like when we came back to, he just texted me, "I love you." But right when we got back together, and we started to, like, we've been back together almost a year now, and it's just like, it's very clear how much better our lives are with each other in it. But we couldn't really fully know the totality of that truth without spending so much time apart.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and it's not, there's no real clear-cut answer for anybody. It's very unique to the parties involved. I think it'd be helpful to provide a little context, or to wrap around this story, around how long were you two together before you end up deciding to be separated, and what kind of age frame were you in, for those that may be listening and wondering. I mean, I know that that can be a piece too, like timing.
totally.
Like the Saturn return, like that age when we're at the end of our 20s, and 27 to 31 is, there's a lot being reformed and integrated in that time.
Well, I'm about to hit my Saturn return. I turned 27 in a month. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like a baby when we met. I was 22, but I had gone through what felt like a massive Saturn return right before we met. And the day that we met felt like this huge like obliteration of my ego and of like my entire reality. Because I've been on a really spiritual path since I was 16. So it's just been like every like 2 years, there's some profound transcendental awakening that happens pretty much like on the mark. And so, and each time it gets like more expansive. And so meeting him was on the precipice of one of those, which is why it felt so profound and prolific as well, or prophetic. But yeah, we met when I was 22. He's 12 years older, so he was 34, I believe. And he was in the Burning Man community. So there was a lot of, you know, open relational dynamics and things of that nature. And I was very clear that my next partnership was going to be a sacred union. I was reading a book called Cultivating Union, and the teachings in it were just so profound to me, and they spoke to such a visceral part of my soul. I was like, that is what I want. That is what I'm calling in. I'm calling in the level of union where the soul is continually revealing layers of its infinite self in this container, where there's going to be moments where it's really challenging, but how can we utilize this space to continually open and expand our capacity for love and for our capacity to know ourselves in each other in this really rich and deep, intimate way that sustains and fuels us for everything else that we're doing in the world. And he was
Sounds
intimidated at
amazing.
first. He was like, whoa, what am I signing up for? You know,
It doesn't sound too heavy there. It sounds beautiful. Yeah, commitment can be scary though. I mean, it's like, what freedoms may I have to let go of if I choose that? But wow.
Totally. I feel like that's a huge thing for men, like the freedom piece. We go back to the polarity teachings. It's like the masculine wants freedom and the feminine just wants to be love and loved. And so I feel, just even experiencing him in that, like there was a deep, deep fear of commitment. And without that commitment, I didn't fully feel safe. And a lot of that commitment stuff came up when I moved in. And so I was like, okay, we're going to shift here, because this doesn't feel safe. And I feel that that's like a really important piece in union, getting clear on what your values are, getting clear in, what you desire from a union, and then cultivating that safety and that trust with each other is like everything. That's like the foundation.
Absolutely. So was it when you moved in, how long had you known each other for?
Almost 3 years.
And then by the time you decided to go different ways, how long was that since you had moved in?
I wasn't there very long. We
Yeah,
lived together
a few
for
months.
we lived
3
together
months.
for 3 months. Yeah. So it was,
Yeah.
by the time we separated, it was like coming up on 3 years.
But that was probably like 3 years. That 3
It was
months.
a little over 2.5. I was counting that time in that time frame.
It
So
probably felt
when I
pretty
moved,
long.
yeah, when I moved in, it was like 2.5 years.
Yeah, it gives us some context around the whole story. I wonder if, like, when you both decided that, how did you know that it was the right decision for you both and for the relationship? Was that a mutual decision?
It was, and there was
Mhm.
just it was a feeling, like there were things that just were not clicking in and aligning, things that I wanted, things he wanted. He thought that in order to be fully free and work on his dharma, he needed to be single and sovereign. And there was also this tussle with sovereignty and with freedom and feeling, and then all the commitment stuff. And like, he shares about this really beautifully, but like there was a part of his boyhood, and like he'll say like, this boyhood that was terrified to die. And he didn't realize that in order to be in union, like the kind of caliber of union that we were cultivating and on the trajectory of, and that I also required, was for that part of him to die. And I didn't really realize the extent of that either. I just knew what would,
Like, this is a simple request. I mean,
yeah, you gotta. No, I had no idea what we were in for. I just, it was a deeper feeling that I also knew and saw his highest potential, and then also saw my highest potential, which was, being in my dharma and being in my power and not being dependent on him. And, I was so young when we got into our relationship. So there was a piece of me too that needed to forge my own way without having a counterpart for a bit. And so in that year and a half, like, he did go through a massive death process, which he speaks into, publicly and beautifully. And he learned that it's called a catabasis, like in archetypal mythology. It's a catabasis it's kind of like the hero's journey, when you really have to fall to the pits of hell in order to resurrect, and in order to fully know yourself and to know your own darkness and to know your own capacity for pain and pleasure, right? Because they go hand in hand. But to be able to like hit that full rock bottom and not have anyone there to like carry you out and coddle you through it, right? And we didn't realize that that's what was needed in order for us to meet in the timeline that we're in now. And for me, I had to learn how to be my own masculine, and how to forge my own way, and how to trust God, and how to trust my heart, and tend to these pieces of my broken heart, through waves of excruciating longing and disbelief and all of these different things, which catalyzed all of the abandonment and pain for my entire life, right? To come up and be felt, and ultimately to empower me. Like, both of these things were like the exact, like you said earlier, concoctions and cocktails that our souls needed to get to the next octave. And the next octave was like way higher up than we were. And so it was like a catapult.
In retrospect, now that hindsight's 2020, is there anything that you would pass on to your previous self, which could represent someone else living out this very story, of how to embrace the uncertainty? Because there's such an unknown there, right? And even if you feel it's right and it's true to go different ways, how can you, and maybe the idea is not to necessarily move through that decision with confidence, because that was where my question was leading, is how do you find the confidence in that? And part of me is thinking, I don't know if that's the point. The point is to get that through the courage of trusting that the decision is right because it's true, and then giving, because it's true, and you're giving that up to the higher power of things. But I wonder if there's something you might, like tell yourself, or maybe even tell him, from where you are now.
Well, that quote that I shared earlier, and I'll share it one more time, is what got me through it. There was something so powerful about it and so simple. So I wrote it out on pieces of paper and put it on all the mirrors around me. And, it's throw yourself into the fire. Nothing true will perish, and nothing false will remain. So having the courage to trust that the universe, God, your higher self has the highest and greatest timeline in store for you. And the best is yet to come. And if you can really weather this storm and be with yourself and love yourself unconditionally through all of the waves, right? And not fighting them, but almost giving yourself to them. No, not almost, like fully giving yourself to what's coming up. And like this kind of circles back to the beginning of our episode, is really tending to the feelings and feeling all of the feelings, and learning how to be a better caretaker for your own heart, how to build faith. Like that courage piece, I feel, goes hand in hand with faith, that, it's like pronoia, the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor, right? Or the Rumi quote, believe everything is rigged in your favor. Everything in this universe is rigged in your favor. So if you can hold that in your heart and trust that the best is yet to come, and that, there's some delayed gratification here, right? But ultimately, this is what's best for you and for the world, because you're a micro to the macro. Allow the pain, for the sensation to break you open to more of the mystery, to more love, to more of your own power, to more of your own medicine. There was so much art that was birthed out of that time. There was so much depth that was birthed out of that time. And even while I was going through these excruciating waves of grief, I was able to meet such deep pockets in my heart and channel that for the collective. So embrace it and mother yourself through it. And yeah, ultimately allow it to break you open to more love.
Yeah, I wonder, I feel like we're covering a lot of bases here, and I appreciate you taking a moment to really tune into that and share so vulnerably around that. It's amazing to hear like your perspective on both sides. And yeah, I don't doubt that that's gonna serve some other people who get to tune into that.
I mean,
I
because
wonder.
it's so sorry, just real quick, I
Yeah,
want to
go.
add to that. It's because
Please.
it is really scary. It is a really big unknown when we've been in partnership for so long, or, I don't, clearly this is the medicine that wants to come through since we're
Yeah.
speaking on it. But again, if that union with self and that union with source and that union with maybe your dharma or your mission is like the thing that you're married to first, then you can trust that that is going to carry you through, right? And so yeah, it is scary and things might look really unfamiliar. It's like such cognitive dissonance, right? You're like, it's really disorienting, it's really scary. And it feels like no matter how many times you explain it to people, like no one really gets it. So it really is this like intimate process with your own soul that deepens the relationship in ineffable and profound ways. And it also pushes you out of your comfort zone. Like a lot of the times pain pushes people to create the greatest art or to go after the things that they've always wanted to do, right? So allow it to allow it to give you the wings that you've always wanted to soar into the calibers of being that you've always desired to.
Yeah, because desire and fear are sort of synonymous. I mean, I think about them as two sides of the same coin. And like it is. Yeah, I mean, I think you're aware of that book, Existential Kink, with Carolyn Elliott, I think is the author. And yeah, it's like doing this deeper fear inventory can be really powerful too. Getting in touch with the fear in a really intimate level, because that is the desire. That is the same energy of desire in a way. And yeah, there's just something really potent and powerful around this way that rebirth cycles are woven into this letting go and trust when things do need to die. And just, yeah, I mean, like you said in that quote, I mean, the quote's perfect really, because it's, it points to the idea that like the valuable thing, the true thing is not going to perish. So the only thing dying is the things that are actually non-essential.
Yeah. And that can be the hardest thing.
Yeah, right.
It's probably
Yeah.
the hardest thing for humans to do is that surrender. Because if the thing that never perishes is love, right? Then everything that is not love will fall away. And the human is so attached to so many things that without them, it dies almost, right? It goes through its own mini death, and the ego at all costs wants to stay in homeostasis. It wants to keep you in familiar territory. It does not want to be disturbed or like thrown off kilter, and ultimately love, right? Like, and then that's fear. We can like equate the ego with fear, and it's just trying to keep us safe, right? But then the courage to surrender to love and trust love, and sometimes we overly identify love with a certain person when really there's the transmission of love that's coming through both of us, and is love's highest desire for us to continue to transmit love through each other. And something that Teddy and I also realized is we became so like it's like, you can't see me right now for those of you listening, but it's like when you're in relationships, sometimes you become so hyper focused on the other person. Sometimes there can be like this obsession with the other person or this addiction, right? And we knew that we wanted to be side by side, and we wanted to be in our dharma, sharing our medicine and magic with the world on our own and together. And in order to do that, we really needed to refine a lot within ourselves. Also, we got to cultivate more of the other's polarity within ourselves. So I got to really cultivate more of this masculine energy in the ways in which I wanted him to show up. I then got to stop projecting that onto him and become more of that in my life and source more of that for myself. And same with him, the wounded feminine in him, and his relationship with like the mother archetype, his own mother, the divine mother, got to be refined through these deep initiatory processes and rebirths that he had to go through in order to cultivate more of that within himself, right? So then it all comes back to that wholeness and trusting that it's all here to serve you.
Yeah, wow. Just leaving a lot of space here to let all this breathe, because it's big stuff. It's important. And yeah, I love that, because there's so many ways I think where you can get mixed up. And I think that's why it is such an incredible, powerful spiritual path union, given that there's so much ownership and there's just so much to accept. I mean, I love that idea of accepting over developing and improving, or improving, right? Because I think it is largely just one gigantic like pool of things to accept. Because if you're trusting truth throughout the whole journey, then all you have to do is accept it. But yeah, again, like you said, what we've been talking about that's not always so easy. And I think it points to the importance of developing that familiarity and attunement to the transcendent aspect of self, which, whether you want to call that God or source or this divine frequency of love or whatever that is, there's a certain stability that I think can get created from that relationship that allows all of this to be navigated with more ease, because then any of the dying that's happening is not necessarily you. Really, it's just some aspects of the personality or the patterns and ways of being, behaviors, thoughts, things that we've identified with that are burning away. But that over identity is the pain. It's like where there can be more suffering, it can be in the places where we over identify. And so like linking up our identity, spending a little bit more time in the space of seeing our true identity, like the original face of God that is who we are. It's like we're always on this pursuit of looking for the back of our own head, as the Zen Buddhists say, or like trying to scratch the tip of our own finger. And it's all there. But yeah, I just I respect your path. I appreciate your way of articulating your journey. And it's been a total honor sitting here with you. Do you have anything else that wants to come through? I feel like you're zoned in the oracle side. I was going to ask you a little bit about that, like what it means to be in your oracle and be embodied in that, and where things have led you, or like what initiations you've had to go through in order to really find more of that capacity within yourself to be a conduit and a channel. Yeah, so why don't we touch in with that a little bit? And if anything else wanted to come through,
Yeah, something that
feel
came
free.
through the other night is I feel that oracles require spaciousness. There requires a spaciousness to really tune in with truth. And an acronym that I channeled for witch a couple years ago for a course I launched is Way Shower of Internal Truth Channeled from the Heart. So to me, an oracle is in the feminine is a woman devoted to piercing beyond the veil and into the heart of truth, time and time and time again, returning to love and offering everything to the altar of love, and just being, a humble student and a loving leader from that space.
Nice. And in terms of really landing in that, I mean, is there anything that you want to share in terms of your feminine embodiment leadership that's led you to that?
The deeper connection with my own feelings and heart, and utilizing everything happening in my reality as something that is serving me in being able to serve the collective. So it really started happening very profoundly during the pandemic. And like, for some reason, when the whole world was more still, I felt more connected to the entire collective than I had ever before, and to the whole of humanity, and to Gaia and the pulse of Gaia's heart in my own heart. And I just became this channel because I was deeply listening. That's it, is the deep listening, deep attunement through being really present and paying attention to what's happening in your reality, because all of it is speaking to you. It's all speaking to us, even the ruptures. I like to say we experience rupture to recapture the rapture of remembrance. So if you can ride the wave of the rupture back into your own heart and really, utilize it to channel your art from your heart, right? Because when you have a rupture, something happens in your experience, it's easy to kind of miss the medicine. So it's like transforming the mess into the medicine through like being present with what's coming up. And that's how I started channeling all of my Instagram content, and like all of, all the work, the body of work that I have now has been through deeply honoring my own heart, my intuition, and my connection with something that's so much greater than myself, and continually surrendering my small self to that greater mystery, to that greater entity. And I like to call it the goddess. So I like to say, let go and let goddess, and every woman is an extension and a channel to that goddess. And refining our oracle is really tuning back into that home frequency and allowing ourselves to create, right? That's that sensuality, that sacral chakra that rules our creativity, our emotions, our sensuality. It's tuning back into that space, ideally every day.
How does Gaia play a role in this process for you?
Gaia is the mother. She's the mother. And when I was waking up to the divine feminine, it was crucial that I go put my feet on the earth every day and attune to her and really listen. And in listening to her, she started gifting me the most profound gifts that I couldn't even explain to people. It was like these little flirts from the universe, these synchronicities that were only meant, they felt like they were only meant for me. And so that's what created this really intimate relationship with the goddess and the mother, was through intentionally and reverently making the time and space to connect with her. So for women listening, that's putting your feet on the earth and really tuning into the sensations present in your body, making prayers to the earth, releasing what's no longer serving you and burning it to ash, and massaging the ash sensually back into the earth. And then also offering your moon blood. That's a big way to connect with your oracle, is when you're on menstruation, you're menstruating, there's an intelligence to your blood, to your moon. And this is the time women used to bleed together in red tents to connect with their oracle collectively and tune into, any perceived or oncoming danger and maybe messages for the tribe or different pieces. So starting to tune back into the natural cycles, right? The organic cycles of the earth and of your anatomy and your female cycle. And then during that time when you're bleeding, that's a beautiful time to connect with the earth, connect with your body, connect with your intuition, and to offer your blood back to the earth, because the earth is a living sentient entity. So when you give her offerings like flowers or tobacco or your blood or your prayers, right? She will she will regenerate it. She will compost it. If there's something that you're working through that feels like so challenging and impossible, like an impossible feat to do on your own, or you're really needing love from the mother, go put your body on the earth and let her know what you're releasing. Like, commune with her. She is an entity, and she's the mother that, is always here to provide for you. We come from her. So we are her.
Thank you so much, Zoe.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, such a pleasure.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share a little bit about how people can find you?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram at Zoe Dane, ZoeDane. I do workshops in the LA area. I have some offerings coming out for 2024. And yeah, I have some courses around all of this. If you're looking to connect deeper with your divine feminine, I also do 101 divine feminine mentorship to help you really tap into that sacral energy and that, that innate oracle that you are, and to be a steward and leader of the new earth from that space.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I look forward to having you on again. As something tells me we'll probably have some more conversations.
I would love that.